Behind these walls where we're not allowed to film is the sad reality of most Brazilian prisons. Overcrowded, unsanitary cells, prisoners left to their own devices, sick people abandoned without care. These inhumane scenes, filmed by inmates in several prisons, date back only a few weeks or months. The country has the third largest prison population in the world, with over 830,000 prisoners. This man endured this horror for 20 years. Recently released, he's talking for the first time, anonymously for fear of reprisals.
Another prisoner looks after you. People improvise as nurses, using whatever we have at hand. You even see bare bones there. I saw more than 60 people die next to me. Yes, they lost their lives. Because when you're lucky enough to be taken to hospital, you're treated not as a patient, but as a tramp, a criminal of the worst kind. The system doesn't re-socialize anyone. On the contrary, it's a university for crime.
According to him, the conditions are the direct consequences of prison overcrowding.
We were in a cell with 58 beds, and there were 192 of us. When there's a complaint about the conditions, they turn up before the inspection. They clean the place, even clean the prisoners themselves. They paint the prison, the sick are sent to hospital so that the inspectors don't see them in that state.
In Brazil, most prisons are run by the state governments, and Rio's are among the most overcrowded in the country. Many complaints have been filed against the state by human rights associations and families, like Dona Norma's.
I'm going to bring him some bread.
Every first Friday of the month, in the middle of the night, this mother and evangelical pastor prepares to visit her 23-year-old son in prison. Dona Norma lives in this squat in a favela in Rio and survives on an allowance of €130. She lives mainly on donations.
I still have to buy 3 bars of soap, which I promised him today. Biscuit, soap, toothpaste, deodorant, but above all, they ask for food. They get food, but it's often out of date. They serve them beans with worms in them. It's not edible. He's become so skinny and sick too.
She heads for the Bangu prison complex, where her son is serving a 5-year sentence for robbery and assault. Dona Norma wants to arrive before daybreak in the hope of being one of the first in line for visiting. She'll have to wait another 3 hours. At the entrance to the prison, a town has sprung up, with clothes shops, supermarkets and cigarette sellers. And on every street corner, ex-prisoners turned evangelical pastors are preaching. Soon the street is filled with women like Dona Norma, mothers and wives loaded with food and hygiene products who make up for the state's shortfalls as best they can.
It's full, and this isn't even the worst I've seen it. It can be all the way to the end of the street and packed inside. And it hasn't changed in the time I've been coming. It's even gotten worse. But we're here, we're fighting. Otherwise, we don't win the war. It's a tough life. Goodbye.
The doors of Bangu prison were closed to us. Only one prison agreed to let us in. The Pedrinhas complex in São Luís, the capital of Maranhão, Brazil's poorest state.
Tá, vou já passar aí, tá bom? Deixa eu ir primeiro lá no fechado.
Judge Douglas Melo de Martins was recently appointed head of the National Council for Criminal and Penitentiary Policy. He agreed to talk to us because this prison, notorious for one of the worst massacres in Brazilian history 10 years ago, has become a model of its kind in just a few years.
Quantos processos você tem, só para eu entender?
Não, eu tinha 3 processos.
3 processos?
O semi-aberto, pela lei, é trabalhar ou estudar.
Bright spaces, a sports ground, fresh food delivered every day, cells for a maximum of 5 people, and everything is to prevent them from falling back into crime when they get out.
They give us opportunities to get out, for those who want to, of course. We can study here so that when we get out we can work, make something of our lives, and not fall back into crime and come back here. That's not the case in other prisons.
It's an exception, a far cry from the photos and scenes filmed in the other prisons, which we're keen to show him.
If this kind of horrific situation still exists, it's because of a large part of the population thinks they deserve it. The problem is that judges, police, and prison governors think there's only one solution, and that's to throw them all in prison.
So how did he turn this complex into a model of rehabilitation?
We check how many places there are in the prisons here, and we distribute them between the judges, and they can't decide to send more prisoners to prison than there are places. It's like a quota that can't be exceeded. And do you know what the incredible thing is? Since we reduced the number of prisoners, the crime rate has gone down.
The judge hopes that his regional initiative will soon be applied throughout the country. Since his appointment, he's already won a battle. The Brazilian Constitutional Council has just launched a major project called Just Punishment, promoting alternatives to imprisonment and better conditions for prisoners.